Welcome to another episode of In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard Price, CEO of Academia.edu, and today we're diving headfirst into a very intriguing and honestly kind of mind-bending paper titled The Multiverse Theory, Scalar Cognition and CODEXCHAIN Interface. This one comes to us from David Little, the founder of CODEXCHAIN, and, Dr. Richard Alan Miller is also listed as a scientific introducer. Quick reminder, as always, I'm here to neutrally present their work. I'm not endorsing it. My goal is to help you understand what this research says, why it matters, and what you can maybe take away, okay? So, let's start with the core big question this paper is asking. I'd say it comes down to this. How can we rethink the multiverse, not just as a theory from physics or speculative sci-fi, but as an actual framework for human cognition, and get this, as a kind of planetary curriculum for learning and ethics? Ooh, talk about ambitious, right? The authors argue that our understanding of reality, the multiverse in this case, shouldn't just be about discovering what's out there, but about how we, as thinking beings, interface with it. They ask, what if the brain itself is like an interface device, or almost like an operating system that lets us access not just one universe, but all possible ones? That's wild, but is it useful? Why does this matter? Well, if you buy their premise, it could mean a radical shift in how we think about consciousness, learning, and even the ethics of sharing information. It touches on ideas you might have heard in quantum physics and philosophy, but the paper takes them into the realm of practical curriculum design and disclosure ethics, like who gets to know what and why. All right, let's try to break down what David Little and his co-author actually did in this paper. They introduced something called scalar cognition, and if you're wondering what that means, you're not alone. Scalar cognition, as they describe it, is the idea that our minds aren't just stuck processing information in one direction or dimension. They can resonate across scales. So, tiny details to huge frameworks all at once. According to the paper, this is rooted in what they call embryonic holography, which refers to the idea that information in the brain is distributed much like a hologram, with every part containing the whole pattern in some form. That concept is anchored, they say, by teachings called Scroll 7. Yes, it's very ceremonial sounding. Scroll 7, according to the paper, provides the neural groundwork for scalar cognition. It posits the brain as not just biological, but as a multidimensional transmitter, or a neural lattice that helps us navigate multiverse realities. If your eyes are glazing over, don't worry, it's dense stuff. The core idea is our cognition might have this untapped multidimensional quality, one that lets us interface with call it a fabric of alternative universes. Now, here's where their system, called CODEXCHAIN, comes in. CODEXCHAIN is described as a dashboard, a kind of interface that lets groups, maybe in the future, whole communities, coordinate curriculum decisions, share knowledge, and manage disclosure in ways that are supposedly ethically sound. So the multiverse, in their view, becomes a curriculum node, a structure for teaching, learning, and maybe ethical debate anchored on this idea of scalar cognition. Is any of this true? Well, I can't say. The paper blends scientific ideas, spiritual or ceremonial traditions, and even legal frameworks to build its case. They talk about the brain as a transmitter, not just a container, and suggest that new ethical challenges arise when you think about knowledge as something that can be scattered and braided across many verses. This is probably a good point to digress for a second, because honestly, it gets me thinking about how in college I once signed up for a quantum mechanics class by mistake, thinking it was like a basic science overview. Let's just say I dropped it fast. Sometimes you end up in a universe you never expected. Makes this all kind of relatable, maybe. So, what does all this mean for you as a listener? The central insight this paper offers is more about mindset than hard fact. It kind of invites you to reflect on how you think. Are your thoughts really singular, or are there untapped dimensions and ways to learn, share, and relate? What if education and, heck, even ethics could be approached multiversally? These aren't answers, they're provocations, but maybe that's the whole point. Once again, I'm not endorsing these ideas. I'm just sharing what David Little and his co-authors lay out. Academic research is always a conversation, never an endpoint. For some, this may seem too speculative, but maybe you'll hear something here that sticks, a new way to think about your own mind or education, or just how weird and wonderful human thought can be. All right, that's all for today's episode of In Depth with Academia. Thanks for joining me as we untangle this very twisty scroll of ideas. As always, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, academic research offers us questions to live with, not hard and fast truths. I'm Richard Price, signing off. See you next time.